Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Vivian S. de Guzman, your host for My Spiritual Money RX. So, you know that in this TV show, we activate your money flow by collapsing time space reality so you can get to your ideal dream life and attract money with ease, grace, and flow. So, today I have a very special guest that would not only give you a different perspective on how your environment looks like and how you can recreate it in a way that would be aligned to your core values and your belief system. So if you think about your whole environment, right? So we know that I do a lot of energy clearing. I read energies and really get the person aligned to their soul purpose so they can get to their ideal life as soon as possible in lightning speed. But what if your environment that you live in is not quite congruent with your core values? Like, what happens? So we know that it could be as simple as your table accent. It could be as simple as the bedroom that you're sleeping in. Are you getting a good night's sleep? And when your environment is in alignment with you, what would happen? Would it be possible for us to actually have health and well-being and prosperity with ease when everything, not just you, but the place you live in or the place you work at, is in alignment with that? So today I have a very special guest, Andrea Keller. She is an architect. She is also a master of sacred geometry. So she's Swiss American, and she's practiced architecture in Los Angeles and worldwide for 25 years. So she's a professor of architecture at USC School of Architecture and Otis College of Art and Design. She founded AKA, an all-female architecture firm 11 years ago in Los Angeles. So AKA practices conscious design, and Andrea's mission is to empower female leaders in the construction industry. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Miss Andrea Keller.
Thanks so
Hi,
much.
Andrea.
I'm so excited.
We love having you here today. So share with us a little bit of what you mean by conscious design. What is conscious design?
Well, I think that we've been taught that, furniture just is a thing, or it's just something that's sold at the store. But everything has not only symbolic content, what style it is, what it represents, but also was it made out of sustainable materials? What did the supply chain look like? Was there any child labor? Sometimes when we see something very cheap, there's a reason why. And I think that we have not been trained in design, but usually when something's too good to be true, it is. And people are always trying to get our money, right? So I think a lot of things have been offered. And the other thing I would say is that in terms of style, people want you to follow a certain style because then they only need to make one thing and they can sell it to millions of people. When we start realizing what reinforces our own power, what gives us, resonates with us personally, we can ignore all of that noise and create a more harmonious and resonant home environment.
Wow, that is powerful, what you said there. And it's very interesting you said that because not all of us are the same, even if we think, right? We're in the same family, we may have had the same issues. It's just because we have the same patterns that we're perpetuating. And so it reflects on our environment. And that's interesting you said that because when I do my nature walk, I kind of started noticing that the mind of the person, like the owner of the house, almost reflects their front yard. Does it? I don't know. It was my observation, and I just wanted to ask from your perspective as an architect, because I'm sure you work with a lot of people, and when you're talking with them and asking, okay, what do you want right out of your space? Do you notice that it's even correlated, or is that just my observation?
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's wonderful, and I think we need more of that. I mean, so often we're restricted in what we can do, but Physical objects are energy, right? And we took the energy to find these things, to pay for them, to present them to the world. So
Right.
that's demonstrating our intention. So
Right.
it's a physical manifestation of our intention. So I think the more that we know about where we want to place those intentions, the more powerfully we can convey those messages. But
Got
I
it.
love to see when someone puts out banners, Happy Easter, Happy Mother's Day. They show that they care about family and celebration. They're telling us who they are. And in ancient times, people used to have, more coats of armor or symbols on their houses that let us know who they are. So what you're talking about is exactly what we need, is more, individual style expressed. We need to express ourselves. And I think people are afraid to in design, but I would encourage people to, listen to yourself, use your intuition, of course. But if something makes you happy, don't listen to what the TV shows say. And I can say this, I did a lot of HGTV, I did a lot of it, but it's really about your own heart and showing the world who you are.
Amazing. Okay, so how does architecture and design affect your money story? Like, is that even related or
So
share?
related.
Because I know money is a trigger, right? That's why we have this show, My Spiritual Money RX, right? Because I notice people always say, I want to have more money, I want to make more millions, I want to be a millionaire. But then when it comes to really doing what it takes to make that happen, they go the other way or they distract themselves. So how does that reflect in our homes, in our architecture, and in our design, this money story?
Good. This is one of my favorite topics. I have a friend whose mother always made them go to thrift stores when they were young, and the family had enough money, but the mom had a very strong sense of lack. And she imprinted this on her daughter by saying, you can never have anything that's not from a thrift store. So through her life, she's gathered some of her own things, but she has one of her own, these old dressers, and it reminds her of her mother, and it's from a thrift store from 35 years ago, and she's never gotten rid of it. That is a physical block in her space, constantly reinforcing that message of lack to her. So that's an important thing to identify. Is there anything in your space that makes you feel that the emotion of lack? And just like we would declutter our psyche through, journaling and, and therapy and in working with a coach, we can do the same to our visual environment. So things exist in space, but they're just as powerful, if not more, because they're subconscious.
Exactly. Yeah. And I am a stickler when it comes to clutter. And it's interesting, what triggers us is usually what happens in our own life, right? And then we work towards clearing that energy. Like you said, a physical clutter could also indicate a mental clutter or an emotional clutter. So what would you say? So of course people don't know that they have these blocks that are subconscious, as explained by you with that client that has an old dresser. So does that mean that people that like old stuff, like antiques, does that mean that they really have an attachment to that, that's a lack, or not necessarily?
Oh, not at all. So I have some very old pieces, but I love what they represent. So you might have something that's made of very fine craftsmanship. You might have something that evokes, for me, I have a couple pieces from Europe, and I feel a very strong connection. So any object you have in your home can reinforce that connection. I have some beautiful baskets that I got in Rwanda, and they were made with such strength in the hands. And you can see that intention. So I try to surround myself, and it's not even about money in terms of purchasing these items. It's not about getting the most expensive coffee table. It's about wanting to embody the values that are contained in each of these objects.
Got it.
So in that piece, it wasn't because it was old, it was because it was from a thrift store, because she felt shame, because her mother said, if you waste this, you're a wasteful person. It was bringing up all the psychological issues. So that the furniture happens to be a vehicle for a lot of negative emotion.
Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting. And for those of us that are sensitive in energies, like I'm one of those, that when I enter a like an antique store, Like all the memories and whatever is attached to that object or furniture, I literally see it all, right? As a
Mhm.
human MRI. I get to witness what's the story behind this furniture. And usually I notice that too, right? Like even if you go to a crystal store, there's a specific crystal that'll call your name and say, hey, bring me home. I want to go home with you. There's almost like this story or connection between the two of you. Hence, then that becomes part of your environment, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. And then I think, once you get attuned to this and you realize what's negative, because you can also kind of clear objects or you can repurpose them or change where they are in a room or change the color. You can do things. But it's also about what has priority in your space. And the interesting thing, we focus so much on who we are as a person and kind of healing our soul. We focus on what we're putting into our body. So this is kind of the next level is what do we surround ourselves with physically at home and work? Because I think people, if they're not attuned to their physical environment, they may be missing all of this subconscious messaging that's coming at us from our own home. And we have so much power in our home to, it's kind of a spiritual gas tank, if you will. Just in, you can really strengthen yourself and strengthen your convictions, which leads to more power in the world, more success, more money, more flow.
Definitely. And even for some of you that are watching right now, perhaps you can do this wherein, you know how we come from work, and a lot of you are probably at work or going somewhere even now, right? Because some people are back to work, so to speak, and they even allow dine-in now here in California. So anyway, you can come in and just sense the change in your frequency, right? In your energetic body, what happens when you enter your home. Or you can ask yourself, how come I don't go home on time, right? For dinner, to spend time with my family. There must be something in your home there that you may have to shift or maybe rearrange a little bit. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a big like decluttering that they have to get rid of everything in their home, right? It's just a little tweak here and there. So just pay attention to those little signals in your body because it'll tell you a lot of things. So Dr. Andrea, I would like to ask you, how can people create an aligned environment? So let's say they feel the shift in energy, right? And there are some, they don't know that it's a specific article in their home that's causing them to feel a certain way. Is there a like a little cheat sheet or a simple way of aligning their environment with themselves?
Yeah, so actually we're doing an assessment, and this will be ready in about a week. So I'll send it to you so people can have this for free. But it's a checklist basically of, what is your favorite place in the home? Where do you like to go? How do you feel about light, comfort? What are your values? Some people value comfort over other things. Some people, it's all about family and gathering and togetherness. For some, it might be the view to the outdoors and the relationship to the outside. So we all have very specific wants from our home. And the other thing that's interesting is our home helps us be who we are, but it does not equal who we are, if that makes sense. So I design a lot of very clean spaces. When I go home, I want to be surrounded by an abundance of textures and patterns, and I have a lot of Indian textiles and Native American textiles because I need that texture. So it's giving me kind of this handmade hug, made by hand hug when I go home because I'm designing hotels and buildings. So even though my values are along the lines of this very clean, and I do think clutter is not good, I need that kind of virtual hug when I come home. When I sit on my couch, I need it to be a nest filled with things made by hand.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. So what are some of the problems? Let's go outside of contemporary architecture because we're surrounded by buildings, right? We drive down the freeway, and I'm sure depending on the place you're at, some people have more greeneries. And I remember one of my neighbors here said the reason why we bought a house in Orange County is because when we're in LA, we're surrounded by too many buildings. It feels so cold and like so business-like. There's no there's no warmth in it. That's the reason why they decided to move in this part of town. So contemporary architecture, can you please enlighten us a little bit on that one?
Okay, this is my I have a lot of favorite soapboxes, but there was a huge shift in culture in the beginning of the 20th century. There was this radical move to modernism as a rejection of everything that came before. So no ornament, no upper class, everybody's equal. We want to, the machine holds all this promise. We can make a better life for everyone. But what happened is that most art forms went back to old styles. We look at fashion. Fashion looks backward all the time. Music borrows from the past. Architecture never goes backwards. And that's a rule, which is kind of ridiculous and crazy. But the other part is that modernism in its white box form, there are some beautiful modern buildings, don't get me wrong, but in its basic form, it's cheap. And so in our capitalist society, there are so many white box apartments going up, and there have been studies that show that living in just a white box without yourself in it is actually contributes to mental illness, because you're not being reflected, but also humanity isn't being reflected. You don't even see a wall of bricks that were laid by hand. That might be enough. So I think a big problem is modernism refuses to die. I'm actually writing a book called Modernism Will Kill You. But I think we need history. We need nature. We need context. We need decoration. And again, this doesn't have to be a huge expense. It could just be a pattern around your doorway. It could be a painted color on your door, so that you know that that's your home. It could be a single carpet in your house that feels like a gathering place. So while I see modernism as a palate cleanser that maybe we need, now as we are building ourselves up spiritually, we need to build our environments as well to align. I mean, our container should align with us.
Share with us a little bit of what is the future of design then? Because are you saying, like, I do see a lot of those boxes, by the way, high-rise apartment buildings. They kind of look the same, right? Because when you enter the homes, they just look like a square box, but outside it may look nice, right? There's a better design for it, so to speak. Some of them are very aware and conscious enough to put like a waterfall or some kind of a body of water, mimicking nature a bit. And I have been to other places outside United States, and they do value those different styles of architecture. Like when we went to Greece one time, in Egypt, and how different it is, right? Like how they super value different types, and it's amazing. It looks beautiful. It looks like a building looks like a sunrise, so to speak. And I'm like, how did they do that? It looks awesome. And inside, of course, it's a box. However, because of the design, there's a feel to it. It's just different. That's why tourists and other people like go there. And I'm sure they learn more, right? Because of all these different components of this design. So what is the future of architecture with all these different ideas coming through?
Well, I think developers aren't going to voluntarily offer us anything better until we as the customer demand it. And part of the problem is we buy what we see available, what's made available to us. But I think the more educated we are, the more demanding we are, the more discriminating, the market can speak for itself. We are still, in this capitalist society. I do think apartment buildings are very important. We have a housing crisis. We have a lot of people, and a lot of people do love living in an apartment for the community. But like we said, in other countries, I've spent a lot of time in Brazil. They might have a sculpture and garden outside the front, something to make you feel proud about the building. And then, of course, you can adjust your interior space to suit you. So absolutely, it's about personalization. One of the most visited buildings in the whole world is Gaudi's Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. And it's hard to think of a building that is, more personal and more of a vision than that building. And that building speaks more to the people of the world than any modernist box. So, I think the more we're aware, the more we're conscious ourselves of what we're buying and how we're decorating. And of course, in the design profession, we will push for meaning, texture, ornament, memory, and a true meaning, in the field of design.
Yes, definitely. We when we were there in Spain, we tried to visit that. You literally have to have a reservation because the line was so long. But we went. We went by to just see what everybody is talking about. We could not get a ticket at all because we didn't reserve ahead of time. We just thought, oh, that's okay. Maybe we can buy this at a higher price. But there was just nothing available to actually go inside the building. So we did go by to see, and it was magnificent. And that building is somehow always in construction, always improving itself, and people keep on coming to that location, that Sagrada Familia. It was beautiful from every angle, by the way, not just the front, but on
Right.
all angles, like sideways, in the back. So yeah, it was amazing. Awesome.
The new approach is to do a white box and then to make up for the lack of ornament with marketing. And so you see all the slick marketing, and then the marketing is using symbols, right, for logos and all those associations. But the building should be the symbol. Like you say, that church. I think of that, millions of people lined up to see a handmade church in the middle of Barcelona. It's because it conveys soul. There's true soul in that building. So that's what we need. So don't accept anything less.
Hey, so now we have to own it, right? And we have to own our space. And one of the exercises I share with the viewers, and I say this to them because I have a lot of clients that are changing, transitioning, and then they move into another space, right? Move into another apartment or another house. One thing I share with them is actually when they enter, because the building or that house or apartment has its own soul, to connect with it before you even put your stuff in it. And I tell them to like touch the walls of the house or the apartment or whatever space they're in and be familiar as if they're listening to its message or what is it conveying to them so that they can actually live in harmony in that space. Because that's very, very important. You know how sometimes you move into one location and you're like, I don't feel good here. It's because you probably haven't connected at the soul level with that space or even with the city that you're in, and that's the reason why you're not feeling good. So that's one way of doing it. And some of us, we use human design a lot in reading, like where do you actually need to be, like what's best for your soul. Like for me, the shores or the beach is a good way for me to live. For me, right? That's me. But that doesn't mean that all the other different people in my life, like family members, some of us are different. So how do you actually reconcile that? If I need to be by beach and then other people need to be by nature, like by the trees, by the mountains. How do we make some harmony in our space with our environment when all of us have different needs?
Well, I think it sounds like you're already doing this conscious design, that you're already in dialogue with the space. And it's unrealistic to think that every space we move into will be a custom piece of architecture just for us. Economically, that's not possible, but also maybe also not desirable, because as we grow and we change, our needs change. So it's very much a conversation between the family and the individual and the space you move into. Just like you say, the entry might feel dark, and then in conversation with it, if it's too dark, you can add lighting. Where you need some brightness, you can add a mirror. Where you need greenery, you can address that. So if you see the physical space as an interaction, or the decor rather, as the interaction between the space and you yourself as a person, that conversation takes place as, takes the form of the things that are in that space. So you as the doctor can go in and say, I need warmth, I need cozy. My son needs, hopefully people have a corner they can call their own, or a spot that's their own. You can tailor different areas of the house to address the needs of each individual within that house. And so it's really powerful if everyone can be part of this conversation. So I do reject, sometimes you'll watch a design show and everything should be this one style. This is terrible. I just think these people are trying to sell me something. And it has nothing to do with my soul, and it has nothing to do, my son is very different, than I am, and he has very different needs. So, and we have to make compromises too, right? So apartments and housing is expensive, furniture is expensive, but if we're consciously in communication, having this conversation with that, we can create maximum harmony wherever we are. And that's really the goal.
I agree. Harmony is definitely important for everyone, within ourselves, within our families, and now within our environment as well. All right, so next we're going to entertain some questions from the viewers. If you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask Miss Andrea Keller here or me, feel free to do so, and we'll be happy to answer them for you. All right, so that's our first question from Lisa. Can it be blessed and the old energies released and rededicated to our space? So for example, if they move in a building or a home, there's so much history there, but perhaps the history may not be so pleasant, right? Or it's not congruent with the new owner's desires, right? To create a different space. What can they do about that?
Yeah, you can definitely do clearings, and also even moving things around. So maybe something that you don't as much like the energy of, you can move so it's not in a place of prominence. Maybe it has a different place in the home. I would experiment with moving things around, but absolutely, just like you clear, we clear our own emotional attachments through meditation. We can clear objects as well and repurpose them. It doesn't mean you have to throw, and please don't throw everything away. That's not. And I'm anti-minimalist, actually. I do think that we need to express ourselves. And sometimes, we have some old pieces, but absolutely have that conversation, and, whatever techniques you use to clear things, I would absolutely do that.
Authentic, like wood, tile, stone, and plants, maybe water feature, even the sacred shapes. Ms. Andrea, can you please enlighten us a little bit on the shapes? I love, I mean, I teach this in the energetic world, right? And I just want to see if it's similar or is it different when it comes to architecture. These different shapes. Let's start with a circle. Like, what is that?
Well, circle, right? It's wholeness. It's totality. It is the self. It is, the belly of the pregnant mother. It's the moon. It's the sun. It's the earth. It's, it's sacred. It's the one. So absolutely, even just having a rug with a circle invites you to focus. Symbols are very powerful, and we see this even if you look at the Paleolithic times. People were nomads and fighting for their lives every day, but they still took the time to carve sacred symbols. And, on all of their environment, symbols are vitally important, and we've totally lost that language. We aren't taught what these things mean. Like a triangle, the Trinity, right? So it represents stability and balance. A square typically represents the earth itself. The symbol for earth is a circle with 4 lines. It's the 4 rivers of Eden. Any symbol that you resonate with. I mean, I see people getting tattoos all the time, but they're not putting symbols in their house. So, start with your house. It's just amazing. Symbols are everything. And I also think, of course, the materials. With wood, where did it come from? What type of wood? What type of environment was it from a tropical climate? Is it bringing that energy with it? Everything physical has a source on this planet, and everything has a story. So the more we know about that story, and the more we're connected to that and aware of it, the more powerful our home and our decor.
Wow. Yeah. So thank you for that. That's awesome. It's such a great understanding, like you said, of the history and the memory that's within that physical reality of ours, right? Normally, I guess when you're aligned, like what would we feel? So let's say we choose one part of our home, right? Because you said sometimes the house is so big that you're like so many different spaces and you're like, well, where am I going to start? Is there a specific or ideal place to start with?
Well, I would look first at the place where you spend the most time. And for a lot of people, it's interesting. Some people, I spend most of my time actually in my living room. A lot of people have living rooms that you aren't allowed in, or the kids aren't allowed in. It's very formal. For some people, it might be their bedroom. I do think a bedroom is very important because that's where you sleep. But for me, it's the place of gathering. So my values, my core values, what I do is I know my core values for myself as a person, but for my core values for my home, I really need peace. I need comfort. I need luxurious fabrics. I love a fuzzy blanket or a silk sheet or something to give me that sense of luxury. So my core values for my home are different from my core values for me. But I would start with, where do you spend the most time, and the bedroom. And I think those are the two most important.
Definitely. Awesome. I think we have another comment or aha moment from Christy. All right. She says, hello, this is great information. I'm always drawn to circles and swirls.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned about circles. Is there anything different about swirls? Like, what is that all about?
Well, yes, spirals are fascinating because spirals have been found, for 40,000 years, people have been drawing spirals on rocks, on the walls of caves. This is a fundamental, and on every continent we see from peoples who had no connection to each other whatsoever. So the Americas, just as they were in, Africa, Asia, Europe, we've always seen swirls. And swirls and a spiral represents life itself. So even though we come around, we're always further out. It's another turn around. And nature itself grows in a spiral, as you can see in the shell of a nautilus or a snail or a horn of a ram. So a spiral is the path of life itself. It's a metaphor for our path. And it also talks about, we're in the same place, but not quite. It's a metaphor for growth.
Yeah, and even our chakras are spirals, right?
Yeah, the whole universe actually is spirals. I mean, the entire universe, if you look at quantum physics, everything is spirals, forces. So it's fundamental. I mean, we are only here because of spirals. It is the most fundamental. And actually, the fact that you say circles and spirals, those are the two most powerful symbols that exist in the world, basically. I mean, that is where we start. That is where life starts, is with the circle and the spiral.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to know we are, like, for some people, right? Like even us business owners, as we grow and expand, I know we always encounter some money stories every time we feel the edges of where are we going, and we thought we're in the same spot, but we're never in the same spot because it's completely different. It's a spiral. Like maybe you think it's kind of a little bit on the right at like 20 degrees, but it's out further because we're now in a different space and time, different location, so to speak. So yeah, thank you for that insight. So share with us again, how can the viewers reach you and get that checklist that you mentioned so that they know when they can be aligned with their design, with their values and their principles in their home, right? So we want to share that with the audience. So where do they need to go in order to get that information?
So we're actually just launching our new site today. It's 4D Design, and that's spelled out FOURD design.com. If you sign up for our email, it'll say, where did you hear of us? If you say Vivian, we will send you this assessment for free. And for us, this is a big change too. We've been working with developers and designing buildings, but it's more important to connect with people and create meaning for across the globe, and to educate people about how to use the powerful resource of your own home and become aligned. So it's a new adventure for us that we're so excited to be on. So 4ddesign.com, and I'll also give you my email, Vivian, so anyone can reach out, and I'm happy to, to connect. Any
Awesome.
questions, send them my way.
All right. I think we have one more question and comment from our viewers. Have you written a book on your beautiful aligned design? From Lisa.
So I have not. I've written a book, which is more of a manifesto. So we're actually sending that to publishers now. I teach a lot, so I do a lot of architectural education, and I'm teaching a course on aligned design, and I'm teaching a course on, I'm calling it 4D design, and what that is, it's a radically advanced sustainability. So we look at every material. Where did it come from? Who made it? Whose hands? How do the foundations touch the earth? It's not about just using one recycled plastic. Oh, it's a green building. We're talking about the connectivity of everything on this planet. So we do have courses coming out. Those will be on our website. I think Align Design is starting in November, and 4D Design will start in January. And these will be a 6-month masterclass, training people how to use the principles that they never tell you in architecture school, but to use, it's really possible to achieve powerful transformation through design. And so I really want to share those tools. So
Thank you. Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, thank
Miss
you.
Andrea Keller. This was such a fascinating piece of information, lots and lots of details. And thank you so much for your genius, for your soul, and for sharing this information. Like you said, some information could be lost, right, because of modernism, but then there are some souls like you bringing it back. So thank you for your work. Thank you for gracing our show. And again, you can connect with Andrea at a-k-a.us, right? That's your
Yeah,
email.
that's my architecture site. So that's, they can reach us there. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're trying to take all of history and bring it back so that everyone has the tools they need.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching us today. And tune in next Wednesday again when we feature our new theme for October, which is surrender and release. So thank you so much, everyone. And I will see you again next Wednesday, surrender and release. So thank you so much, everyone. And I will see you again next Wednesday at the same time, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Bye.